The house felt too quiet after the funeral, as if every corner of the old Pennsylvania farmhouse had swallowed its breath the moment Eleanor Hayes was lowered into the ground. And now her granddaughter Lily stood in the middle of the living room, surrounded by boxes of sewing supplies, porcelain figurines, outdated cookbooks, and the faint lavender scent that had clung to her grandmother's clothes for as long as she could remember. Lily's mother and uncle were outside arguing over who would take the antique dresser, their voices rising and falling like a storm building on the horizon. But Lily stayed inside because she couldn't bring herself to pretend any of this was normal. Not the sudden death, not the tension in the air, not the uneasy silence that had replaced Eleanor's soft laughter. When she spotted the old cedar chest under the window, she lifted the lid expecting photos or blankets. But instead her hand struck something harder, something wrapped in a floral scarf that smelled faintly of smoke. When she unwrapped it, her breath caught. A thick leather journal, worn at the edges, with tiny handwriting peeking from the sides where the pages had been stuffed full. Inside the front cover was a note addressed not to her daughter or son, but to Lily. "You were the only one who ever listened." It began in Eleanor's delicate, looping script. "So you deserve to know the truth. All of it." Lily's pulse quickened as she turned to the first page, the ink dark and angry in places, shaky in others. Her grandmother wrote about years of fighting with her own children, Lily's mother, Anna, and her uncle, Grant, over the estate of Eleanor's late husband, the land he left behind, the money he'd saved, and the property he'd insisted remain in their family as long as possible. But the more Lily read, the stranger it all sounded. This wasn't just a family disagreement. It was a war of wills and forged signatures, of secret meetings and hidden documents, of Anna and Grant pressuring their aging mother to sign forms she didn't fully understand. And then came the darker pages, the ones where Eleanor's tidy handwriting grew jagged at the edges, the theft. The night 10 years ago when Eleanor's jewelry box, filled with pieces her husband had bought for her over decades, vanished from her bedroom drawer. Police chalked it up to neighborhood kids or a break-in gone wrong, and the case went cold within weeks, but Eleanor wrote in her diary that she always knew the truth. She never wrote the name, not at first. She wrote clues, mentions, hints, someone close, someone who thought I wasn't paying attention, someone who believed I was old and blind. As Lily flipped further, her hands trembling, she found the entry dated the night of the fire that destroyed Eleanor's shed and most of the garden tools, a fire everyone claimed happened when lightning struck the roof. It wasn't lightning, Eleanor wrote, the words underlined twice. And it wasn't an accident. He came back for what he hadn't taken yet. He wanted the rest, my lockbox, my documents, anything tying him to what he did. Lily froze. He. Her grandmother had finally used a pronoun, and the page beneath it contained a loose photograph. A blurry shot taken from behind a curtain, showing the outline of a man near the shed in the early hours of the morning. The picture was dark, poorly lit, but Lily recognized the jacket immediately. It was one Grant still wore, brown, leather, with a distinctive tear on the left elbow. A chill crept through her chest as she read the final lines Eleanor had ever written. "If you are reading this, Lily, then something has happened to me before I could confront him. Your mother will make excuses. Your uncle will pretend not to understand. But one of them knows exactly what he did. And if he learns this journal is missing, he will come looking for it, and for the person who has it." Lily snapped the journal shut, her mind spinning, her pulse pounding as though someone were standing directly behind her. Outside, the argument between Anna and Grant had stopped. The air was eerily still. And then, through the thin curtains, Lily saw Grant walking toward the house with a slow, deliberate stride, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable, eyes fixed not on the furniture, not on the boxes, but straight through the window at her. As he reached the porch, the floorboards creaked, the doorknob rattled, and Lily shoved the journal under her sweater, forcing herself to breathe evenly as the door opened and Grant stepped inside, giving her a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You've been in here a while," he said lightly, closing the door behind him with a soft click. "Find anything interesting?" The journal's weight burned against her ribs like a warning. She forced a smile back, barely managing to keep her voice steady. "Just memories," she said. But Grant kept watching her, too closely, too knowingly. And in that moment, Lily understood what Eleanor meant. He wasn't grieving. He wasn't reminiscing. He was searching, and he wouldn't stop until he found what was missing. The next morning, the house felt different, as if the walls were listening, waiting for someone to say the wrong thing. Olivia sat at the old kitchen table, the diary open before her, the photographs scattered like evidence from a crime scene. She hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her grandmother sitting in this very room, quiet and harmless, or so everyone believed, while writing things that could tear the family apart. Olivia kept replaying the last page she'd read, the entry where Grandma Eleanor described hearing footsteps outside her window the night the jewelry vanished, the familiar silhouette passing by the barn just hours before it caught fire, and the sentence that froze Olivia's blood, "I know who it was, but I won't write the name yet. Better to see their face when they realize I've always known." Olivia wasn't sure what scared her more, that her grandmother knew, or that she had clearly planned to expose the culprit someday. And now that Eleanor was gone, that someday belonged to whoever held the diary. Olivia shoved the book into her bag when she heard the front door open. It was her father, Daniel, his face pale, his movements stiff, as if he too sensed a shift in the house's air. "You're here early," he said, avoiding her eyes while setting a grocery bag on the counter, something he never did at 7 in the morning. "Couldn't sleep," Olivia answered. She watched him closely, suddenly hyper-aware of every twitch, every hesitation. Her dad had always been the calm one, the mediator, the man who said things like, "Let's not stir the past." But now she wondered if that had been wisdom or fear. "Listen," he said finally, rubbing the back of his neck, "before the rest of the family arrives for the memorial planning. I need to warn you about something." Olivia's pulse spiked. Here it comes, she thought. "Your Aunt Karen called me late last night. Someone told her you took something important." Olivia kept her expression blank. "Like what?" He hesitated. "Your grandmother's journal." She almost laughed. "Already? They're moving fast." "I didn't know she had one." Olivia lied smoothly. Daniel winced, a small, involuntary reaction that made Olivia's stomach drop. He knew she was lying. And worse, he looked disappointed, afraid. She didn't know, but something inside her hardened. If he was part of whatever Eleanor had written about, Olivia wasn't going to tip her hand. "Not yet. Dad," she added, forcing a tired sigh. "Karen accuses everyone of stealing something after a funeral. It's her coping mechanism." Daniel didn't smile. "Just be careful today," he said. "People get strange when money is involved." He said it like someone repeating a lesson learned the hard way, but not necessarily from Karen. Olivia wanted to ask what he knew, what he suspected, but he was already walking out to the backyard with that same stiff posture, like a man carrying more weight than he'd ever admit. When he was gone, she took the diary back out and flipped to the next entry, dated 2 weeks before the fire. Eleanor described finding the lockbox in the shed broken open, not forced, but picked. She listed who had keys to the shed. Olivia's heart plummeted. Her father's name was the first on the list. She slammed the diary shut, unable to breathe. No, she told herself. It was just a list, not an accusation. But her grandmother's tone, it wasn't neutral. And the way her father had acted. Olivia pressed her palms to her eyes, shaken. She didn't want the story to go this direction. She wasn't ready for it. But the diary wasn't finished with her. The doorbell rang. Olivia nearly jumped out of her skin. She stuffed the diary into her bag again and hurried to the hall, glancing through the window. Her Aunt Karen stood on the porch, but she wasn't alone. Behind her was Olivia's cousin Matthew, the one person Grandma Eleanor had never trusted, the one she once referred to as a fox who learned to walk upright. He looked different today, anxious, alert, desperate, even. "Olivia," Karen said as soon as the door opened, skipping any greeting. "We need to talk. Now." Matthew's eyes flicked past Olivia's shoulder as though searching the house for something. The diary. He didn't bother hiding it. "Sure," Olivia said, stepping aside, heart hammering. "They know. Or at least, they suspected." Karen pushed inside with the self-importance of someone convinced the moral high ground belonged to her. Matthew followed silently, locking eyes with Olivia in a way that sent a cold ripple down her spine. "Before we start," Karen said, dropping her purse dramatically on the table, "I want to make one thing clear. Mom trusted me most. Not Daniel. Not you. Me." Olivia said nothing. She didn't need to. Karen was unraveling on her own. So if she wrote anything at all, it should be in my hands. Matthew nodded, stepping closer. We just want what belongs to the family. Olivia swallowed hard. Meaning? Karen leaned in so close her perfume turned suffocating. Meaning we know she was writing things down. We know she was keeping track of every lie, every theft, every betrayal. And we know someone took it. Olivia straightened her shoulders. Her voice came out steady. And you think it was me? I don't think, Karen said coldly. I know. For a split second, Olivia thought her aunt might grab her bag right off her shoulder. She instinctively pulled it closer. That tiny motion was enough. Matthew's eyes sharpened. Karen's lips curled. And Olivia realized something with chilling clarity. Whatever her grandmother wrote, whatever truth she uncovered, someone in this house was terrified it might come out. And they were willing to do anything to get ahead of it. Sit down, Karen ordered. We're not leaving until you hand it over. Olivia looked between them. Her aunt's anger, Matthew's cold determination, and something inside her finally snapped into place. Her grandmother hadn't been paranoid. She had been right. And Olivia would not give these people the truth they feared most. Fine, she said calmly. Let's talk. But inside, she was already planning her next move. Olivia didn't sit so much as lower herself slowly into the chair, keeping her bag within arm's reach as Karen paced the kitchen like a prosecutor preparing for cross-examination, while Matthew leaned against the counter with his arms folded, eyes glued to her every twitch. The morning sun through the window should have made the room feel warm, safe, familiar, but instead it illuminated the dust motes floating in the air like tiny warning signs, reminders that nothing in this house was as clean or settled as the family liked to pretend. Karen finally stopped pacing and planted both palms on the table. I want the diary, she said bluntly. The one Mom wrote. The one you found. Olivia met her gaze without blinking. I don't have it. Karen's mouth twitched. You're lying. Then show me proof, Olivia said quietly, surprising even herself with the steadiness of her voice. Karen blinked, thrown off for half a second before doubling down. Mom wrote everything, Olivia. Everything. About the will. About the jewelry. About the fire. About who sabotaged this family for years. And if you think you can waltz in here after skipping half the holidays and become the guardian of her secrets, you're out of your mind. Olivia felt anger simmer under her ribs. Maybe if you treated her like a human being instead of a bank account, she'd have trusted you with more. Matthew straightened at that, his jaw tightening. Enough, he snapped, stepping closer. Where is it? His tone wasn't aggressive in volume, just cold, controlled, and far more dangerous than Karen's emotional outbursts. Matthew had always been the quiet one, the observer, the guy who stayed just outside the spotlight. But Grandma Eleanor had never trusted quiet. She said quiet people hide the loudest sins. Olivia put a hand casually over the flap of her bag. I don't have it. And even if I did, why would I give it to either of you? Karen let out a sharp laugh. Because you have no idea what's in there. But we do. Olivia froze. Karen saw it. Matthew saw it. And both of them smiled. Not warmly, but with the satisfaction of hunters closing in. How would you know? Olivia asked carefully. Matthew stepped closer and lowered his voice. Because Grandma didn't start writing that journal 10 years ago. She started long before that. Back when your dad and my mom were already fighting over the inheritance. Back when the money started disappearing. Olivia's pulse quickened. She hadn't read that far yet. Matthew continued. She told people things. People she trusted. People like who? Olivia asked. People who knew the truth about the fire, Karen said, arms crossed. Olivia's throat tightened. She remembered the entry describing the broken lockbox. The list of names. Her father's near the top. What truth? She asked, though her voice wavered. Karen leaned in, her eyes sharp. The truth that the fire wasn't an accident. It was punishment. Olivia felt her stomach twist. Punishment for what? Matthew glanced at Karen, then back at Olivia. For stealing her jewelry. But she said a lot of things, Karen cut in. Some of them were lies to protect herself. Some of them were traps. That diary doesn't just hold stories. It holds confessions. Olivia swallowed hard. Confessions from who? Karen's smile was thin and humorless. From all of us. The room fell silent. Outside, a car door slammed, and Olivia's chest tightened with dread as more relatives began to arrive. Voices drifting in from the porch, footsteps climbing the stairs, whispers as news spread that everyone was gathering unexpectedly early. They couldn't be here for memorial planning. Someone had told them something. Someone had warned them the diary was missing. The kitchen door swung open, and Olivia's father stepped inside, looking startled to see the small tribunal forming. Behind him were Aunt Rose, Cousin Dylan, and Uncle Wayne, all wearing the same expression, tense, alert, hungry. "What's going on?" Daniel asked, though his eyes darted straight to Olivia's bag. Karen didn't wait for him to settle. "She has Mom's diary," she announced, pointing at Olivia like she was accusing a thief in an old western. "And she won't hand it over." "Karen," Daniel said sharply, "we're not doing this today." "Oh, we are," Uncle Wayne said as he stepped closer, his boots thudding against the tile. "Because if Eleanor named names, then we all deserve to know which one of us she chose to throw under the bus. Or who she planned to blackmail," Dylan added quietly. Olivia felt the air thin around her. This wasn't a conversation anymore. It was a mob auditioning for panic. Daniel turned to Olivia, his voice softer but edged with urgency. "Liv, do you have anything you want to tell me?" His eyes weren't angry, they were pleading. Afraid. That hurt worse than any accusation. "Dad," she whispered. "I didn't." But Karen interrupted with a roar. "Check her bag." Olivia jerked back as Matthew reached forward, fingers outstretched toward the strap. "Don't touch me," she snapped, yanking the bag away. But Matthew didn't stop. He stepped closer, crowding her in, the others forming a loose circle like a pack closing around a wounded animal. "If she didn't take it," Karen said, "why is she fighting so hard?" Olivia's heart pounded. She wasn't just outnumbered. She was trapped. And the terrifying part wasn't that they wanted the diary. It was that they wanted to know what Eleanor had written about them. Meaning any one of them could be the person Eleanor claimed had been closer than anyone ever realized. The thief, the firestarter, the betrayer. And now they suspected each other just as much as they suspected Olivia. "Back off," Olivia said, voice shaking but loud. "All of you, back off." For a moment, they hesitated, just long enough for her to grab her bag, whirl around, and bolt toward the hallway. She heard shouts behind her, chairs scraping, someone lunging. But Olivia was faster. She sprinted toward the front door, praying it wasn't locked. Because if her grandmother's last secret was buried somewhere in this diary, then the only safe place left was away from this house, and away from the people who suddenly had everything to lose. Olivia burst out of the house and into the chilly afternoon air, her shoes skidding slightly on the gravel as she sprinted toward the driveway, clutching her bag like a lifeline, heart pounding so hard she felt it in her throat. But before she reached her car, a shadow stepped directly into her path. Aunt Rose, deceptively gentle-eyed Aunt Rose, who always smelled like cinnamon tea and told everyone she hated conflict, now blocking Olivia's escape with a stance that said she had been waiting for this exact moment. "Sweetheart," Rose said, hands raised in a calming gesture that didn't match the cold tension tightening her jaw. "We just want to talk." Olivia shook her head, taking 2 steps back, scanning the yard, realizing too late that Matthew and Dylan were already circling around the side of the house, moving like they had split up to cut off all exits. "No," Olivia insisted, voice rising as adrenaline made her limbs tremble. "You all want the diary. That's not talking." Rose's expression flickered, guilt, irritation, before smoothing into something almost maternal. "Honey, your grandmother wrote terrible things when she was angry. She exaggerated. She lied. That diary could hurt people who don't deserve it." "Like who?" Olivia demanded. "Like you." Rose's eyes hardened instantly, and Olivia felt a wave of dread crash through her because the softness was gone, replaced by something steely and practiced. "You don't understand what your grandmother was capable of," Rose said, stepping closer. "You didn't grow up under her pressure. You didn't live through the games she played with our lives." Olivia tightened her grip on the bag. "That doesn't give you the right to chase me like this." Rose exhaled sharply, and for the first time Olivia saw the real woman beneath the facade, tired, frightened, and cornered. "Then give us the diary," she said in a voice that rattled with urgency. "Before it ruins us all." Voices erupted behind Olivia as the others poured out of the house, their energy wild and frantic, their shadows stretching across the cold grass like long arms reaching for her. Daniel pushed through them, breathless, face pale. "Liv," he called. Stop. Please, don't run. Let me explain. The way he said explain made Olivia's skin crawl. Explain what? She demanded, her voice cracking as she glanced around, calculating a path. Over the fence? Into the woods? Anywhere but here. Daniel took a shaky step forward. Your grandmother. She came to me weeks before the fire happened. She told me she thought someone was stealing from her again. I told her I would handle it, that I would talk to everyone. But she didn't trust me. He swallowed hard. So she wrote it all down instead. Olivia stared at him. And you didn't tell me? Daniel looked shattered. I thought she was confused. I thought the fire was an accident. I thought. You thought wrong. Karen snapped from behind him, and Olivia saw in her eyes a dangerous mix of fear and fury, like someone who had spent years being underestimated and suddenly refused to tolerate it. Mom wasn't confused. She knew exactly who betrayed her. Matthew suddenly shouted, "Stop talking," and everyone turned toward him. His face was drained of color, his voice cracking with panic. You're all going to drag us down. Just stop. Olivia's chest tightened. Why would he be panicking unless he had something to hide? Unless he feared the diary named him? Without warning, Dylan lunged forward, grabbing for the bag. Olivia jerked it away, but he was stronger. Years of farm work had built his shoulders into stone, and the sudden yank nearly knocked her off her feet. She kicked at his shin, twisting, freeing herself for a second before Matthew joined him. And then hands were everywhere, grabbing her arms, her jacket, her hair, the strap of her bag stretching and creaking as voices rose into angry, overlapping shouts. Give it. Stop fighting. She's going to run. You idiot. Hold her still. Olivia's panic exploded into raw instinct. She swung the bag hard, hitting Matthew across the arm, and in the brief shock that followed, she tore herself free and bolted again. This time toward the backyard, her lungs burning, her vision blurring as tears of fear and fury welled. She heard footsteps pounding behind her, but she didn't look back. She couldn't. She veered left, racing toward the old tool shed, Eleanor's shed, the place where the lockbox had been kept before the fire. The charred remains were still there, the structure half collapsed, jagged beams jutting like broken ribs against the sky. Olivia skidded inside the blackened shell, chest heaving, swallowed by the smell of soot that never truly washed away. She pressed her back against the far wall, clutching the bag to her chest. Outside, the footsteps slowed. Voices hushed. She went in there. That place isn't stable. We need that diary. I'm not letting her walk off with our futures in her hands. Daniel's voice cut through the others, thick with something that sounded like grief more than anger. Please, he called, don't make this worse, Liv. Olivia closed her eyes tightly. She knew she couldn't stay in the shed. The roof groaned ominously, ready to collapse. But she also knew if she walked out, they'd corner her again. And then a sickening realization struck her like a blow. They were more afraid of the diary than they were concerned for her safety. Move. A voice suddenly barked. Uncle Wayne, the loudest, the most impulsive, stomping closer. I'll drag her out if I have to. Olivia's breath hitched. She had seconds, maybe less, to make a choice. Fight. Run. Hide. Tell the truth. Or lie. But the worst option, the most dangerous option, was to let any one of them get their hands on the pages Eleanor had written while knowing, without a doubt, that someone in this family had already destroyed evidence once before. And somewhere in those pages, Grandma had written the line that haunted Olivia most. The one who took everything from me still lives close. Closer than anyone suspects. And Olivia realized with a cold, chilling certainty, Grandma had written that warning for her. Olivia stood frozen inside the charred shed, her breath coming in ragged bursts as voices gathered outside like a tightening noose. And when Uncle Wayne's heavy footsteps crunched closer, she forced herself to swallow her fear and clutch the diary bag even tighter, knowing she had only moments before they dragged her out one way or another. So, before she could talk herself out of it, she dug into the bag, pulled out the diary, and ripped free the folded set of pages tucked in the back. Pages Grandma Eleanor had marked with a red string, pages Olivia hadn't dared read yet, and she bolted to the back corner of the collapsed shed where a small, shattered window frame sat dangling from a half-burned beam, squeezing through jagged wood as splinters tore at her jacket and palms, her feet hitting the dirt outside just as someone, Wayne by the sound of it, stormed into the shed behind her with a furious shout. Olivia darted toward the tree line, adrenaline shooting through her veins as branches whipped at her face, the cold wind biting her skin, and she didn't stop until she was buried deep among the pines behind the property, heart thundering as she finally opened the pages she'd grabbed in her frantic escape. The words blurred at first from the tremor in her hands, but then they sharpened into sentences that made her breath stop altogether. I saw him that night. I saw what he took. I saw what he burned. Olivia's pulse hammered as she read on. Grandma describing the night of the fire 10 years ago, the night everyone claimed was an accident caused by faulty wiring. But Eleanor had written that she'd heard someone outside, had followed quietly, had seen a figure breaking into the shed, rummaging through her lockbox, and when she'd confronted him, he'd knocked her down and thrown a lantern behind him as he ran. He hadn't meant to start a fire, but he also hadn't gone back to help her. The pages never stated the name outright, but Grandma described details: the limp in his left foot, the outline of his broad shoulders, the smell of motor oil that clung to him. And Olivia's stomach twisted because that meant one person. One person who limped after a motorcycle crash. One person who was known for repairing engines in his garage. One person who had been acting increasingly paranoid ever since the diary was found. Dylan. A cold wave of horror swept over her. He had stolen from Grandma. He had caused the fire. He had left her to die. And he had been living 2 houses away, eating Sunday dinners with the family, laughing at holiday parties, helping carry Eleanor's coffin. Olivia's throat tightened as she imagined Grandma writing these pages while knowing the man who betrayed her still walked freely. Olivia stuffed the pages back into the bag, her mind racing with terror and certainty, when a twig snapped behind her. She spun around, stumbling back, but Daniel appeared from the shadows instead of Dylan, his breath fogging in the cold air, his hands lifted to show he wasn't a threat, and the look on his face, devastated, pale, almost pleading, made her heart ache despite everything. "Liv, please," he whispered shakily, stepping closer but not too close. "They're losing it back at the house. Dylan's tearing the place apart. Matthew's yelling at everyone. Karen's crying. They think you're going to the police." Olivia clutched the diary bag to her chest. "Maybe I am." Daniel winced like she'd slapped him. "You don't understand what will happen if you do. This family, everything will fall apart." "It already has," Olivia whispered, and Daniel's expression crumpled with a painful truth. He knew she was right. He took a careful step closer. "What did you read?" Olivia's silence answered for her. His eyes widened, filled with terror. "Liv, please tell me Dylan wasn't in it." Olivia flinched, and her silence again was answer enough. Daniel cursed under his breath, turning away, hands gripping his hair in anguish. "I knew he was hiding something. I knew it." "You knew?" Olivia asked, voice trembling with anger and disbelief. Daniel shook his head hard. "No, I didn't know this, but I knew he was terrified after the funeral. He asked me what you planned to do with the diary." A chill ran through Olivia's bones. "Why would he ask you?" Daniel swallowed. "Because he thought I could calm you down. He thought I could convince you not to get the authorities involved." "Jesus," Olivia whispered, pressing a hand to her forehead. "He's desperate, Liv," Daniel murmured. "He's cornered. And cornered people do stupid, dangerous things." Olivia stared into the woods, every branch looking like the silhouette of someone lurking. He already did something dangerous. Daniel stepped closer, softly touching her elbow, his voice raw. "Let me help you. Let me get you out of here without them knowing where you went." Olivia wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe someone. But then another voice cracked through the trees, sharp and too close. "Liv." Her heart stopped. Daniel froze. That voice. That desperate, frantic, furious voice. Dylan. He was in the woods. Hunting. "We need to go," Daniel whispered urgently, and for once Olivia didn't argue. They ran, branches snapping, leaves crunching, the chilling echo of Dylan's calls following them deeper into the darkening trees as Olivia clutched the diary to her chest, like the only truth she had left in a family built on lies, fear, and secrets. Olivia and Daniel tore through the woods, lungs burning as the fading daylight turned the branches into claw-like silhouettes reaching for them, and Dylan's distant shouts twisted through the air, growing sharper and more unhinged with every echo. until Olivia could no longer tell whether the pounding in her ears was her heartbeat or his boots crushing the underbrush behind them. They burst out onto the old service road that circled behind Eleanor's property, skidding to a stop as the cold wind slapped their faces, and Daniel grabbed Olivia's arm, breathless, shaking, eyes wide with panic as he pointed toward the abandoned tractor shack at the end of the dirt path. A place no one used anymore, a place Dylan would search last, a place where they could buy themselves a few precious minutes. In here, Daniel hissed, pulling the door open, the hinges groaning, and Olivia stumbled inside with him, her fingers still wrapped around the diary, her chest heaving as her eyes adjusted to the dimness. And for a moment the only sound was their ragged breathing and the wind howling through the cracked boards, until a heavy thud landed outside, too close, too deliberate, followed by the soft crunch of approaching steps. Daniel pressed a finger to his lips. Olivia held her breath. A shadow slid beneath the doorframe. "Liv," Dylan called, voice low and controlled now, which terrified her far more than his earlier shouting. "I know you're in there." Olivia's breath hitched. Daniel reached for her hand and gently pulled her deeper behind a stack of old crates. Dylan's boots stopped inches from the door. "We can fix this," he murmured through the wood, his tone disturbingly calm, like he was trying to soothe a frightened animal. "Grandma twisted everything. You don't understand what she did to us. What she threatened to do." Olivia tightened her grip on the diary. "You tried to kill her," she whispered under her breath, unable to speak louder, unable to address a man who had lived as her cousin for 25 years and yet was a stranger capable of far darker things. The door handle rattled. Daniel tensed. The rattling grew more forceful. Then it stopped. Silence. Long enough for Olivia to start trembling. Then, bam, the door flew open, slamming against the wall, and Dylan's silhouette filled the doorway, his chest rising and falling heavily, his eyes darting across the shack until they landed on the glint of metal near the crates where Olivia had shifted the diary bag just slightly too far into the open. He moved toward it, slow, predatory, and Olivia and Daniel had only seconds, maybe less, before he found them. So Olivia made a gut-driven, reckless choice. She slid out from behind the crates and stood up, holding the diary itself in her hand, exposed, vulnerable, desperate, but defiant. Dylan froze, stunned. Daniel cursed under his breath. "You want this?" Olivia demanded, her voice shaking but loud enough to echo in the shack. "Then look at me and admit what you did." Dylan's jaw clenched so tightly she could see the muscles twitching. "Olivia," he said, hands lifting as he stepped toward her. "You need to calm down. You're making this worse." "You set the shed on fire," she said. "You left her there." His expression cracked, just for a second, into something wounded, panicked, cornered. Then rage swallowed it whole. "She was going to destroy us," he snapped. "Do you have any idea what losing that land would have meant? What she planned to tell the lawyers? She was going to cut us all out. I was fixing it, for everyone." Olivia's stomach twisted. "She trusted you," she whispered. "She thought of you like a son." "Yeah," he hissed. "And she treated me like a thief every time something went missing. Like I wasn't family. Like I didn't belong. Don't pretend she was innocent." He lunged forward, but Daniel stepped between them, shoving Dylan back so hard he stumbled into a pile of rusted tools. "Enough," Daniel growled. "This ends now." Dylan scrambled to his feet, grabbing a broken shovel handle like a weapon, fury blazing across his face. "You think you're her hero?" he spat. "You think she'll pick you over blood?" "She already did," Daniel said calmly, and Dylan's scream as he charged was guttural and unhinged. Olivia barely had time to duck as Daniel tackled him. The two crashing together in a violent, chaotic struggle, fists flying, wood clattering, metal scraping as Dylan swung wildly, and Daniel blocked, shoved, fought with a desperation Olivia had never seen in him. She scrambled backward, clutching the diary, searching for something, anything, to stop this, but the chaos blurred around her until Dylan shoved Daniel so hard he hit the ground with a sickening thud, momentarily stunned, and Dylan turned toward Olivia with that same broken, feral look he'd worn the night of the fire. "Give me the diary," he panted, staggered but determined. "Or I swear." But he never finished the threat. Red and blue lights exploded through the cracks in the shack. A loudspeaker blared. "Hands where we can see them." Someone must have called the police. Maybe a neighbor hearing the shouting. Maybe Karen finally collapsing under guilt. Maybe one of the others realizing things had gone too far. Officers stormed in, weapons drawn, and Dylan froze, blinking into the lights before dropping the makeshift weapon as if the last 10 years of secrets had suddenly crushed him all at once. Daniel struggled to his feet. Olivia stood trembling, the diary clutched to her chest like a shield. The officers separated them, cuffed Dylan, secured the scene. Olivia stepped out into the cold night air, her lungs filling with the sharp scent of pine and dirt, and for the first time since the funeral, she felt something like breath, painful, unsteady, but real. The family gathered outside in stunned silence as Dylan was taken away, Karen sobbing into her hands, Matthew staring at the ground, Rose whispering prayers under her breath. None of them looked at Olivia with anger anymore, only with the dawning horror of what their silence had protected all these years. Daniel stood beside her, bruised but steady. "What now?" he asked gently. Olivia looked down at the diary, its worn leather cover warm from her grip. "Now," she whispered, "I tell the truth. All of it." And as she walked toward the police car to hand over the pages Eleanor had died protecting, Olivia felt the weight of her grandmother's final warning and final gift settling into her bones. Someone in this family had lived close, far too close, but the truth had lived closer, waiting for her to find it.